Carlos Espina.
Hello everyone, hello. My name is Carlos Eduardo Espina and I'm the moderator for today. For those of you who don't know me, I am a content creator, as they call them nowadays. I make videos in Spanish about immigration, politics, social issues. I live here in Houston, Texas, and I have over 20 million followers. And I've gotten to make a lot of content with the Vice President before, during the campaign. But now I'm just so honored to be here in what I think is a really special moment. But before we begin, I just want to ask something from all of you. It's not every day that you have a Vice President here in Houston, Texas. It's not every day you have someone as important as Kamala Harris. So I'm going to need a favor from everyone. I'm going to need everyone to be energized, to be excited, because this is a celebration. This is a thank you to someone who has given so much to our country, especially in these difficult moments. So throughout the event, I want y'all to be energized, to be happy, and leave this event with a smile on your face. Are y'all ready? All right. Are y'all ready? All right, I'm going to need y'all to stand up and get loud because we have Vice President Kamala Harris. Are y'all excited?
What's up, Harris County?
Well, look, I'm going to be honest. I don't know if we can sit down. There's too much energy here, but...
We are all here together. We are all here together.
Oh, my mama, you look good, Kamala. Oh, my mama, you look good.
Well, this is going to be great, and we haven't even gotten started, but that's how we do it here in Houston. So. Well, here we go.
And we love each other, right? That's what community is about. Yeah. We're not letting anyone beat up our spirit. We know what we stand for, so we know what to fight for.
All right, so thank you for being here. I think on behalf of everyone who's present, we're so honored to be here in your presence. And so now let's talk about your new book, which is right here, and I'm understanding everyone has a copy as well. So let's dive right into it. I'm going to be honest about your book. When I read it, I couldn't help but feel nostalgic. It took me back to last year and brought me back memories of the excitement we felt in those moments, those 107 days, and what could have been. And so to begin this conversation, I just want to ask broadly, why did you write this book? Who do you hope picks it up? And what do you hope they take away from it?
Thank you, Carlos. So I wrote the book for many reasons. First, it was unprecedented. Think about it, you all were a part of it. It was unprecedented. So we have an election for President of the United States. The sitting president is running for re-election. 3.5 months before the election, he decides not to run. The sitting vice president then decides to run and steps up against a former president who had been running for 10 years with 107 days to go. And here's the other thing that is quite unprecedented. And it was the tightest, closest presidential election in the 21st century. He does not have a man number. And oh, you got it too, Carlos.
I had to give you your moment.
But the other thing, and you and I have talked about this, is I hope that in reading the book, you and we will all remember that in those 107 days, there was so much optimism and enthusiasm and, dare I say, joy.
Yes.
And it was in you. It was in you. And no one election or individual or circumstance can take that from you. It is the light that we each carry inside of us. It is the light we see in each other. Look to your left, look to your right. It is the light that carries us, in particular right now, during the darkest of times. And we cannot lose sight of that or let that light be dimmed or in any way extinguished. And that is also part of why I wrote the book, to remind us that is us and in us. And we love our country. And it is our country. And we will continue to fight for our country.
Well, I'm gonna be honest, I was just looking around and I was like, this is really exciting, you know, coming into this event. I've been over the past few months kind of sad, depressed with everything going on, but seeing the energy here, your responses to the questions, it does give me hope. And I know these will be 4 long years, but they will pass like they've always passed, and we'll make it out. So, wow, thank you.
But here's what I would add, Carlos, is that, look, because this is about truth talk, right? This is about real talk. It may get worse before it gets better.
Yeah, that's true. Extinction burst.
So we gathered this afternoon a community of people, most of whom are strangers to each other, but with a sense of a collective understanding of our power, to hopefully leave this place with the spirit with which we came, which is knowing that the power of the people is so strong, and we are resilient, and we are undeterred. We are undeterred. That's so critically important. And you're here because you have decided, each one here, and so many others, that we're not going to end this moment that may last for another 3 years. That we're not the type of people who's going to just pull up the covers and put a pillow over our head. That's not who we are. We're not doing that, and they're not getting that from us.
Well, look, there was many passages in the book that really spoke to me, but there's one specifically that I wanted to ask you about. It's actually on page 86, if anyone actually wants to open up their book and look at it.
You're going to church.
But on this page 86, you write about your residence manager by the name Storm Horncastle. Storm Horncastle.
Isn't that great?
Yeah, I've never seen that name. You say that you like her, and I quote, because over the years I've learned that it's one thing how people treat me, and it's another to see how they behave towards someone they perceive as less powerful. And later on in the chapter, this leads to you saying about your potential vice president pick. I need to know that my running mate is a person who values the dignity of everyone and would take a moment to show it. You know, as someone who interacts with everyday people every single day, I understand the importance of, you know, speaking to the people who are really lifting up this country. There's so much focus of those who are in power, but the reality is that this country moves forward because of the people who are working 9, 10, 12, 15-hour shifts, who never get recognized. And the fact that you made mention of that in your book, really spoke to me. So I just wanted to ask you, you know, why is this character trait so important to you? Where did it come from? You know, what can you say to all those people who look up to you?
So part of how I explain it is, so I am one of 2 daughters of a mother who arrived in the United States at the age of 19 by herself. My mother was a brilliant, short, brown woman with an accent. And, well, I mean, you would have thought she was 7 feet if you ever met her, but she swore she was 5'1". I think she was 5 feet. And I'd see how my mother was treated. I'm the eldest. I would see how my mother was treated. Whether we were in a department store or wherever, there were just certain assumptions that people made about my mother because of how she looked, because of the accent she had. And, you know, when you're the eldest child, watching these things, they leave a lot, you see a lot as our kids see so much. And I always knew and could see how people were to people they thought were powerless. And it is very important, and I know the power I have, and at this point, you know, I'm writing the book during my years as Vice President of the United States, so I'm fully aware of my power, and I'm aware that people will treat me a certain way, but not necessarily somebody like my mother. And it is important to me to know that anybody that I work closely with, who I will share power with or give power to, will treat all people with dignity and respect. It's very important to me. And you know, I think part of the work that we have right now in this moment in time on this point is there, you know, people are trying to gaslight us in many ways, including to suggest that the predicament of those who aren't doing well is based on the powerless instead of the powerful. Yes. Let's understand what's going on. You don't have less because of people who have even less than you. And so let's reject and debunk this gaslighting that is trying to put some kind of blame on people who are relatively powerless. Meanwhile, some of the people who are the most powerful in our country have been completely feckless and capitulating to power that they know is an abuse of power.
Yes.
I think the people like that answer.
Yes.
Well, one of the things you said in your answer right now leads me to my next question, which is, you know, how the identity of not just the Democratic Party, but a movement in general opposing Donald Trump. And my question is, despite everything Donald Trump is doing, the polls show that the Democratic Party is more unpopular now than they have been in many years. And I want to know, why do you think that is? Do you think the party needs a new brand, a new direction? Is it something else? I'll leave that up to you.
So it's real, the point you're making, and there's some amens about the point you made. And so it's real and we can't pretend it's not. And I think there are a few things. One, I'd say this. We as Democrats, I think, have to focus on the immediate needs of the people. And, you know, one of the things, for example, that I would have done differently is, you know, in our administration, we did the Build Back Better bill, and with an emphasis at the beginning on the infrastructure bill and the CHIPS Act, right? Infrastructure and CHIPS. And that's very important. That's very important. But if I had to do it over, I would have first done the extension of the child tax credit, affordable child care, and paid family leave. Because those meet the immediate needs of the people. And if the people feel that Democrats are not delivering on their immediate needs, the popularity of the Democratic Party is going to go down. I think there's another thing that's happening, in particular with like the pundit class, you know, the people who are, you know, cable, around sitting around tables talking. I sometimes think of it as like high-class gossip. But one of the things that I've been frustrated with in those conversations about Democrats is I think they've all got to get over that savior complex, which is the suggestion that there is one leader who is going to come and save us, or one message that is going to come and save us, when we have so many stars, including right here from Texas. Jasmine Crockett, we have so many. So, you know, I think that it's part of, we have to demand of those people who have these platforms around the future of the Democratic Party to acknowledge the stars that exist, that may not be running for president, but are stars nonetheless. Stars nonetheless. I think part of it is also, we've got to really focus on the fact that look, you gotta fight fire with fire. We have to fight fire with fire. You know, we play by the rules. We want to hold up the standards. We need to fight fire with fire. Because what's happening right here with the governor of Texas and redistricting just ain't right. That's why in California we're trying to right a wrong. And I give praise to my governor for working on that.
Thank you, California.
It's not something
They're cheating. They're cheating. And we just keep saying, oh, they're cheating. We gotta handle that.
This wasn't one of the questions that I had, it's just more of a comment that I wanted to add based on your answer, because I know you're very humble and you might not want to say it, but I'll say it for you. I think what really stood out to me from the time that I met you is that you really understand what the base of the Democratic Party is. I think there's been a shift in the focus to cater to the interests of the rich and the powerful that you were mentioning. And people forget that the base of the Democratic Party is the people who are here. The base of the Democratic Party is the people who maybe aren't tuned into politics 24/7, but they care about the price of their rent, they care about childcare, they care about education. And somewhere along the line, the Democratic Party got a little bit afraid to interact with those people. And so what really changed when you announced your candidacy in those 107 days, and I read it in the book, is how many rallies you had, how many events you had, because that's where you see who you should be working for, who you should be catering for. And I think in the beginning of the book, you have a section where you say, you always ask, who am I not hearing from?
Yeah.
And I think that's just so important. So you didn't mention it in your answer, but I wanted to say, as someone who's met you before, that one really stood out to me. The fact that you understand that you need to put the interests of the everyday person above those, you know, whether it's consultants or whether it's people who are giving big money to the party, because these are the people who are going to push us forward.
And that's right. And you're absolutely right, Carlos. And as you said, I have long believed, and I would say to my team all the time, let's sit back and listen to who we're not hearing from. Which requires one to understand who everybody is to know who's not in the room. And that's a big leap for some people. To figure out who's always been in the rooms that they're in and realize there's a whole lot of people outside that door who have not been given entry or who keep trying to bang down the door to get in and should be in the room by merit and by right.
Well, look, this next question is something you touched a little bit on your previous answer. I wasn't going to let you come to Houston without making it about Texas, because we love Texas.
Yeah.
So one thing I noticed throughout your book is that you make many mentions of Texas all throughout the book.
Yes, you do.
Visits that you had, events that you attended, funerals, rallies. In fact, I believe you mentioned Texas more than some swing states. And I picked up on that, and I said,
Texas is big.
Everything big in Texas.
And by the way, do you know I'm an honorary Texan?
oh, really?
Okay, Rodney Ellis, where are you? I'm about to tell. So, when Rodney Ellis was acting governor, when then Governor Bush was running for president, Rodney Ellis became acting governor, and he commuted a bunch of sentences. But the other thing he did is that for a collection of friends and I went to college with his wife, Leisha, he made us honorary Texans. So I am officially an honorary Texan. Officially. For a long time.
Well, as an honorary Texan, I have to ask you my question, which is the following. I would like to think that the reason you mentioned Texas so much is because you see potential in Texas.
I do.
And you see a possible change in Texas. So my question is, do you believe in a future in where Texas turns blue?
And it's going to take work. I mean, listen, I do, but I know, for example, I know what's been happening in this state over years now, in addition to what's now coming out of DC, and how it's to not sugarcoat, how it's beating people up. Yeah. And, you know, there's a plan at place in moments like that, I believe, which is to make people feel small. To divide communities in a way that makes people feel alone. All with the result of disempowering people. And so part of the resilience and the fight of Texans that I so love, it is your nature, is you know how to fight for what is right and be big, and I think that's part of what is important right now for Texas and the future of Texas politically, is for the people who know these games that are being played to not be overwhelmed or deterred, but to stand strong and keep fighting knowing that you will win. But you know, I mean, on that point, I'll just segue to another part of the book. The most difficult chapter of the book for me to write, the most difficult chapter for me to write, was about election night and the day after. It was really, really, really difficult. It was tough. It was hard. And so, you know, in writing the book, I would check with various people who were on the journey with me. You know, this is what I experienced. Did you see? Did you, whatever, to get feedback. And when I was writing that chapter of the book, it's the first time I asked Doug, my husband, what election night was like for him. It's the first time he and I talked about it, when I was writing the book. You know, there's some times when it's just so traumatic, you just really don't want to, you need time. So we started talking about it. And I did not know until I was writing this book. So for election night, every election I've had, we do friends and family dinner, and then we go to where everybody is hanging out for the campaign. So this was no different, and the house was full of family. And that morning, my brother-in-law, Tony, and Doug left to go to Michigan. We had been in Philly the night before, didn't get back until like after midnight. We did the Philly steps, the Rocky steps, the night before the election. We got back to DC, then Tony and Doug left for Michigan. And I was doing all the election day stuff. And when they were in Michigan, it felt really good. They were like, we're gonna do this. The people on the ground said, we're gonna get this done. They were feeling really good. We were all feeling really good. But what had happened next is that they were coming back, and on their way back, they got a call from a friend of ours who was a Democrat who is one of the opinion people at Fox News, one of the few Democrats at Fox News who speaks. And this friend called him and said, what are you all hearing? Because I'm in the boiler room at Fox, and they're telling me some stuff that's very troubling. So Doug and Tony came back, and when Doug got back to the house, I knew something was a little off, but there was so much happening. What I learned in the conversation he and I had is, one, I did not know that conversation had happened, that friend had been at Fox and told him that Doug had, when he got home, was so overwhelmed by what he heard and worried about it. It hit him hard out of the blue. He went upstairs to take a shower and prayed. And that night ended up being what it was. And so I write about it. But back to the point about fighting. So the next day, so we had planned a victory speech at Howard University, my alma mater, election night. And a lot of people came in town. You know. A lot of people had come in town, and because we were not certain of the outcome, former Congressman Cedric Richmond went out to the stage that night and told everybody, she's not coming out, we'll be back tomorrow when we get more information. And then we learned that we didn't win. And I was writing my speech because it was really important to me to come out on that stage the next day and speak to the hope and the excitement in a way that it wasn't extinguished. And I was trying to figure out how to reconcile what I said every time on the stage, which was when we fight, we win, with what happened. Because my feeling was, this is not about, you win some, you lose some. This is not what that was. And so, at the last minute, almost right before I took the stage at Howard, I wrote into my speech what I know the truth to be, which is, look, sometimes the fight takes a while. Sometimes the fight takes a while, period. And that's how we have to think about moments like that, whether it be turning Texas blue or anything else. Sometimes the fight takes a while, but we don't tire and we don't give up and we are not deterred. We will rest when we need to, but then we get back out there.
I got a little bit sad with your answer because as you were speaking, I started thinking where I was on election night and how I was feeling on election night. And it's one of those memories, you know, that you just kind of blur it from your memory. I think we all felt some sort of collective grief. And I hadn't thought back to that night, and I remember that night I cried. One, because I knew you and I knew you would have been an amazing president. But second, I cried because I love this country. You know, my dad came from Uruguay when there was a dictatorship in Uruguay in the 80s. My mom is from Mexico. And I remember growing up, I didn't live through any of that, thankfully, because they were here in the United States. I grew up in College Station, Texas, before moving out. And growing up there, you know, I remember I would always talk to my parents, and they would always tell me this is the greatest country on earth. Why? Because there's a democracy, and I didn't know what a democracy meant when I was a kid, but I started to grow up and say, hey, other countries don't have those same privileges. Here, you know, you're able to have some sort of stability. You're able to plan out your future. You don't have to worry about the government collapsing next year or there being some sort of coup. And so I grew up, and then I started, on election night, I said, what is this country becoming? And I cried that night, and I said, you know, everything that I remember growing up, I grew up, Bush was the first president. I kind of remember I was like 6, 7 years old, and Obama, you know, and then Trump, but I was like still, you know, we were hanging in there. But that night I felt like we lost it. But then over time, a week passed, 2 weeks passed, I came back to Texas and I started talking to people like the ones in this room, and I realized the fight continues, like you said.
Yes, it
This is a setback, but it's not the end. And when I read your book, I just had those feelings reinforced, and now I feel more energized than ever to say, you know, we're gonna make it out one way or another. And this is a 250-year-old country, and we're not gonna let it slip away because 4 years of a bad administration. And I'm just happy. I wanted to personally thank you because this is something I talked to my parents. They said you should, you know, not everyone would write a book after what happened. Some people would just disappear. I mean, I think many people would say, you know what, I'm out. You can be anywhere in the world doing whatever you want to do, but you decided to come back, write a book, and not only write a book, visit the whole country and speak to people. So I think that's really admirable. And I want to thank you for that.
That night, to your point, the only thing when I learned what had happened, the only thing I could say, literally I couldn't form any other words over and over again. I kept saying, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Because I knew what it would mean for our country. I mean, this is where, look, we predicted it all.
Exactly.
Except I did not predict the capitulation. I did not predict from universities to law firms to media corporations just bending the knee at the foot of a tyrant. I did not predict that. I did not predict that. But you reminded me of something else that it was important for me to write about is, you know, and this is about also the Democratic Party, back to your earlier question. We have to understand that in this fight, this is not just about Trump, okay? Let's remember that this is what we are experiencing now that feels overwhelming and chaotic is not chaos. We are experiencing a high velocity event that is about the swift implementation of a plan that has been decades in the making. And we have to see that for what it is. We have to see, you know, now all of a sudden everybody's realizing Project 2025 and Trump are connected.
Yes. For real. Right.
Exactly.
Great.
What you say?
But here's the thing, remember, if you look at it from, you know, when I was in college, Ronald Reagan was president. And I talk about the path over the decades from Reagan's celebrity to Newt Gingrich's just base language and rhetoric to Pat Buchanan's nativism. Paving the path, those three among many, for what we now see in the White House. See the connections. Understand that when we talked about Project 2025, they didn't come up with that overnight. It is the product of the Heritage Foundation. It is the product of the Federalist Society and work that has been done over decades. And they were just waiting for the right moment to have somebody in the Oval Office who would help it pop.
Yes.
So this is to say, again, about the hard work. One election is not going to be enough to do the deep work we've got to do to see what's at play. And again, this is where I say Texans are always in it for the long run.
Yeah.
You're always in it knowing, you know, we don't fall for the okie doke of the moment. We have work to do that is about seeing what we must do in the immediate moment, including bringing up the ability of people to afford their everyday lives. And we must see a pattern that is at play about an agenda that has been a long time in the making and is being implemented now and will continue to be implemented if we're not paying attention to what they've been doing around everything from gerrymandering to leading up to a United States Supreme Court being what it is. I know what they've been trying to do with courts here in Texas, and I know people have been fighting on that piece, right? All of that is a part of this. So we do ourselves, and we do Democrats a big disfavor to think it's only about one man, because there's a whole lot at play right here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, one thing that really, yeah, you can clap, go ahead. I think that deserves a clap. No, but there's one thing that struck to me and really stood out to me about your book, and it's that despite everything going on in our country right now, you decided to finish the book with optimism, with hope. And I don't want to get too ahead of myself because I know many people maybe didn't read the book, but in the afterward...
They wouldn't be here if they weren't. Or I actually recorded the audiobook too, so there's that.
Well, when y'all get to the end of the book, we'll see that in the afterward. You focus a lot on young people and future generations. And you know, as someone who's only 26 years old, I still consider myself to be quite young. This brings me hope and optimism. So I want to know, why was it so important for you to end your 107 days book with that afterword, and specifically the anecdote of my shade?
Yeah. So when I got back to California, it was after the inauguration. So the inauguration was January 20th. And by the way, so Doug and I were packing up, and we had not only the election, but then I needed to certify the election on January 6th. So I write about that, and that was a very difficult day. Then, the January 20th for the inauguration, and so we were packing up DC to leave DC, as is custom, right after the inauguration around noon on January 20th. Well, during that period of time, the wildfires were spreading in California, and our house was under mandatory evacuation until January 19th. So we didn't actually know where we were going to go until the day before the inauguration. But we got back, and it was really important to Doug and me that as soon as we hit ground at LAX to go to Altadena, which is a working, hard-working community in California, where they were so impacted, and to help give out food for all those families that survived, the old Black and Latino community who'd lost everything. And for the first months, I was literally and metaphorically unpacking. I mean, just boxes of stuff, just unpacking in every way. And Doug had a dinner, a dinner meeting. And he's at this restaurant, and this young woman hands him a menu that has been kind of crumpled up a little, and she said, "I wrote this for your wife." And on the back of the menu, she handwrote a note. And she told me in this note how I had inspired her, and that she was a senior in high school, student member of the Compton Unified School District Board, that she was accepted to Cornell, and was going to study education, and this is what I say to all the young leaders who are here, are the ones that we care about and love. And so Maisha is her name. Check this out, because this young woman is empowered. She put her phone number on that note. Right? Yes, she did. Yes, she did. And Doug brought it home, and I read it, and I was so moved that I called her. And I talked to her, and again, real good move to all our young leaders. When I'm talking to her, she says, "Well, will you come to my graduation?" And I went.
It's in the book.
And it was, and oh my goodness, I went, and there at the Compton High, these beautiful, brilliant young people walked across the stage with such light and enthusiasm. And I do end the book talking about that. Because our future is bright.
Yes, it is.
We have to see the light. I'm going to say it again, in these moments of darkness. We have to see the light. In the midst of, we used to talk about it in the campaign all the time, about how, I believe that the sign of the strength of a leader is not based on who you beat down, it's based on who you lift up.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And we have to hold on to that. We have to hold on to the fact that in this is going to sound very corny, but I'm going to say it. In this moment where there's so many forces that they're full-time spreading hate, we really do have to really think about love.
Amen.
And think about it in terms of whatever that is, in addition to our family and our close circle, but how our expressions of love for our humanity, for our neighborhoods, for our society, for our country can manifest themselves in moments like this. And there are so many ways, whether it be that you are mentoring, the child of a single parent that is in your neighborhood, whether it is you are active at your church, whether it is that you are active with the nonprofits that are carrying such a heavy load right now, not to mention the ones they're trying to sue, right? There are so many ways that we express, and remember, we've always believed that it's coexistent, our fight with our love. Those are two parts of the same thing. Those are two parts of the same thing. We fight because we do love.
Exactly.
We do care, and we do believe, and we have faith in what is possible, but we're clear-eyed about the moment and what we're up against. All of those things coexist.
Yeah.
Lecture over.
Okay.
Well, this isn't one of the questions I had written out, but as I hear you speak, it just came to mind right now. You talk about love and compassion, but sometimes, and I feel many of us here have the same emotion, it's hard for us to feel love and compassion when we see neighbors, friends, people we know who voted to get us into this mess. Especially, what was most heartbreaking for me as a Latino, when I saw the results come in election night, there was one thing I was praying for. I said, if she loses, I hope it's not because of the Latinos. And unfortunately, that was the case. The numbers showed that more Latinos voted for Donald Trump than, in recent history. And I looked at that and I said, it just broke my heart, because I had heard it in the build-up to the election, but I heard it after too. People, they're not so happy right now, but in that moment, they were saying, I voted for Trump because of this and because of that. People I know whose parents came here undocumented, former undocumented people who had now gotten citizenship, and I started to say, how can I just started to feel resentment. I said, how could they have done this betrayal, not just to the entire country, but knowing you have family members who are going to be persecuted, knowing you have friends who are going to be persecuted. So when you talk about love and having compassion, there's been relationships that, I just don't know how to keep going. But so I want to know your guidance, as someone who's young and who wants to, I understand, maybe you were feeling this, but I feel, in my mind, nothing justified voting. Because like you said, we knew what was happening. I understand that you said one thing and then another, but we knew what was happening and now it's happening. And especially as a Latino, I want to ask, one, as a general message, what do you say to those who are struggling day-to-day relationships with people we found out voted for Donald Trump? But beyond that, on the Latino issue, what can the party do, or how does the party move forward to, recapture those voters who voted for Trump for whatever reason, and now they're coming to people like me and say, hey, I messed up. I shouldn't have done it, but now we feel it's a little bit too late. But how do we move forward? Because we have to move forward. How do we do that?
So you're right to raise this, and some people think it's a sensitive topic, but I think if we don't talk about it out loud, we're not going to deal with it. Correct? So let me start with this. For Latinos that voted for Trump, and I think I would venture to say a significant number of people who voted for Trump, they voted for him because they believed that he was going to bring down prices. And he lied.
Right. Lied big time.
It really is that simple in my mind and basic. He said he was going to bring down prices, they believed him, and he lied. So we're fast forward to today, the cost of groceries is higher, unemployment is higher, inflation is higher. He lied.
Big time.
He made all kinds of promises to people, and he lied. And instead, what did he do? He did the things that he said he was going to do that take care of himself. He did say he was going to weaponize the Department of Justice against his political enemies. He's doing that. He did give us a sense that he was going to enjoy the favor and flattery of dictators. He's doing that. He did give us a sense of understanding that he was going to figure out how to line his own pockets and help rich people on the back of working people with his tax cuts. He did that. So when we talk about the Latino vote, I think that there is a piece of it that, you know, it gets back to my earlier point about for Democrats, the first priority I know and believe has to be to deal with the immediate issue that is affecting the majority of people, which is bringing down the cost, bringing down prices of food, of housing, of childcare, of living. That's the first order. And to your point, I know people, I've met people, you know, there was one fellow that a friend of mine was telling me about, she was talking to, he's a Latino voter, he was a big Trumper. And his, I think it's his common law wife, but 20 years, she's Cuban American. She's in deportation proceedings to be sent to Sudan. And my friend asked him, well, how are you feeling now?
Wow.
And he said, I didn't think he was gonna do that. Because he said he was only gonna go after certain people, right? And I say this to say that we cannot be mad at people who believed something that he lied to them about without asking them, we have to, listen. We have to, okay, be mad. But don't give up. Don't give up on them. Don't give up on them. Don't turn your back to them. Don't. We can't. You know, we can't have, it's going, I get it. I really do. But we can't give up on people. Especially, we can't give up on people. And we just can't. And when I think about, you know, and obviously a Latino voter, this is not a monolith. We have, you know, to your point of your father's from one place, your mother's from another, you are, right? Within one family, there's incredible diversity around life experience and needs. So I'd also want to make sure that Democrats, because this is part of what I find to be troubling about the Democratic Party, is we tend to put people in boxes and leave them there.
Wow.
And that's part of what's wrong, is we have to understand the diversity within each population and then get to understand what their needs are and figure out, are we speaking to those needs? And that's some serious work that needs to happen, including as it relates to Latino voters.
Well, I really respect your answer, and I think it's, I definitely struggle, and I agree, but I think your answer highlights why I believe you're such a great leader, because I think, you know, a good leader, a good captain knows which direction to move in, even if the currents are against them. And I think right now there is a movement to further get us to hate our neighbor, hate our family members, hate whoever it may be who made this decision. But, you know, on the Latino issue, and I think this is something that's not spoken about enough, but as a Latino, I'll say it, if you look at the breakdown, the biggest divide among Latinos was along the level of education. And I think about this a lot of times because before as someone who's been to college, been to law school, this is a huge privilege, and I understand a lot of people haven't had that same privilege. So I speak to people who voted for Donald Trump, and they start to say things, and then I put myself in their position and say, you know, maybe if I hadn't had the academic formation that I hadn't had the life experiences, the privileges that I had, I would think the same way. And it doesn't justify it, because I don't think nothing justifies it, but it helps you understand that we're not, you know, we can't see the world only from our perspective. We have to put ourselves in the shoes of others. And the reality is, and I appreciate that you mentioned it in your book, is that the reality is that during Biden's years, there were many people who were still struggling, who were suffering, who couldn't pay rent, who were struggling to make ends meet. And I think the Democratic Party didn't do justice in recognizing the suffering of those people, which led to a lot of resentment. So I'm very happy you recognize that, not only in your book, but that you're doing it moving forward, and you did it throughout your time as vice president. I think that's the path forward, and I think, you know, you're taking us in the right direction. That's it.
Let me add also, and I appreciate all the points you've made. Let me add an additional point, which is one of the things that I think is one of the biggest challenges we face is the rampant amount of mis and disinformation. And so we should be careful that we are not making assumptions about where people's hearts and minds are if they are being influenced by mis and disinformation. And that's part of my earlier point about don't give up on people. Like, we have to make sure that we're working with the same facts. And we're not always. And this is where, I mean, if anybody is here, it is because we are all leaders, and opinion leaders, and community leaders, and civic leaders. And that's going to require some additional hard work, which is not to be frustrated with our cousin, who is operating from an information source that we know to be pushing propaganda, and just trying to figure out how, little by little, we can put some facts as we know them into their consciousness around how they're processing what's happening to them and in their country. And that's some hard work. It's much more difficult than it's ever been. You know, when I was in the Senate, I was on the Senate Intelligence Committee. And we investigated Russia's interference in the 2016 election. And meanwhile, this person in the White House right now is trying to suggest that it didn't happen. And it did. It was a bipartisan committee chaired by a Republican. And we also then declassified a lot of our findings and made them public. And part of what we saw was that adversarial nations, in this case Russia, with their propaganda and misinformation, target in particular who they think are vulnerable communities, like Black and brown communities, with mis and disinformation, knowing that the receiver of that information already has a lived experience that may cause them to distrust government. Okay? So there's a vulnerability that's already there to that kind of mis and disinformation. Well, there was a time in history, but mis and disinformation campaigns are not new. Since the beginning of time, you know, drop leaflets from a plane, whatever, right? But it used to be that really only nation states would have the kind of resources to distribute enough mis and disinformation for it to affect whole populations. Now the entry point, because of social media, is much lower. And this is the beauty of it too, right? It democratizes information. Anybody can have a voice. But the other side of that is that if it is salacious enough, if it is interesting enough, if then it is attractive enough to bots that are fueled by those who actually do want to harm our democracy, it spreads. I talk about in the book, when I had to leave the campaign trail during those 107 days, I talk about those moments, and it was because my first job was being vice president. And so one of those times was during Hurricane Helene, which we all remember, the devastation. And so I was speaking with survivors of Hurricane Helene, and there was all this mis and disinformation about what the Biden-Harris administration was not doing to help people with FEMA. Some of you may remember that. Yeah. And we were doing so much. And they were spreading this mis and disinformation, and it broke my heart because it meant that people who needed help weren't getting it because they were being told it wasn't there. Right? And so, as we're thinking about the work we have to do with all of the folks that, you know, we feel various ways around, let's also remember that there are things at play that are also meant to manipulate people into believing something that is not true.
Good answer.
Well, as a content creator, I could go on and on about misinformation and what I see on social media, but I also want to make note that we have 3 questions from the audience. Hopefully we can find exactly, I have them here written, but I would like them to stand up. The first one is Marley, but it doesn't have a last name, so maybe... Marley, where you at,
Wait, Marley, where are you?
Oh, she's somewhere out there.
Yeah, she's right there. Look down. Look down. Kamala, look down. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, the question here, I'm the one reading it, I think, yeah. What is is something you wish you knew earlier in your career? That's a good question, Marley. Thank you.
You know, Marley, life is long. And one of the things I was fortunate enough to learn, but the earlier the better, is you are surrounded by people who you may not realize are invested in your success. And I learned that it was really important. First of all, I encourage the ambition in everyone here. Be ambitious. Don't let anybody knock it out of you, tell you that it's not right, tell you you're not. Be ambitious. You know, I can't tell you how many times over my life, especially early on, oh, you're too young for that, or oh, nobody like you has done it before, or oh, they're not ready for you, or this is one I love, oh, it'll be too much hard work. But one of the things I learned along the way is in life, but certainly in your, in your work, have a safe group.
That's so true.
Like that, it doesn't have to be a big group, but that small group of people that they'll understand what you're going through, and you can call them and laugh at the thing you're not supposed to be laughing at.
Right.
Use the words you would not use in church.
Right now.
Cry and not be judged. You know, the people who will watch you trip and laugh at you and then pick you up and push you back out. Because none of us has achieved success. And that is certainly the case for me, without the support of a whole lot of people around the world. In fact, I dedicated the book to my team. I dedicated the book to my team because on those 107 days, my goodness, they dropped everything. I talk about a number of them who dropped everything to come and for 107 days just left it all on the field. Really. So, there you go.
The next question, I'm not sure if these are O's or A's, so the name is either Soror, Routledge, or Sora. It's Sora. Oh, sorority, I didn't know that. Oh, there you are. I thought that was your name. I guess you learn something new every day.
Carlos, you got to do better.
All right, so the question here is, resistance in speaking out comes at a cost when the administration doesn't care about or follows the law. What does effective engagement look like beyond voting?
It's about, going out and joining that peaceful protest. It is about signing up for those, I'll say it, I said it earlier, but I really would like to emphasize, signing up to help the nonprofits in your community. You are doing such important work, and you see what this administration has been doing. They're saying they're going to target like the donors to those organizations. They're going to sue those organizations at a national level. They are trying to strike fear in everyone who is trying to help somebody else. And so the more that as an individual and we as a community can support those individuals and organizations that are doing that work, it's so important. Run for office if you are so inclined. Get involved. I know we talk about this all the time. Get involved in your school district. Get involved in your school district. Right? Let's support our teachers to be able to educate the children about facts. God bless the teachers. Can we applaud the teachers who are here? No one here is getting paid enough. And do God's work teaching other people's children. Thank you. Thank you.
My mom's a teacher, and so is my dad. He's a university professor. So thank you everyone who works in education. All right, this is the final audience question. I hope I get this name. I know the first name is Courtney. The last name is I don't know, that's an A or no? It's Robugs or Robats? Oh, there you are. She knows who she is, so. All right, this is a really good question. How do you find peace in the midst of all this chaos?
That's a good question.
That's a great question.
Yes.
Peace in terms of my spirit. I have to search for it sometimes, to be honest. For months, I could not watch like cable news.
Right.
I just didn't. I couldn't. I try to find and emphasize in my mind and thoughts the good and the light. Like, it's like my shade. That's why I ended the book with her. I have faith in us and in each other that we will ultimately do the right thing, and that gives me a certain level of peace, but really because I know that with that faith that we each have comes our willingness to fight. Like, I believe in that. You know, I grew up the child of parents who were active in the civil rights movement, right? I have seen and I know how we come through moments of darkness and can lift up the light, and that gives me a sense of peace. There are times when I just need to turn everything off.
Yeah.
And I love to cook. I mean, you know, stressful moment, you'll find me in the kitchen just chopping away.
Okay.
You know, I believe in God. I believe in the goodness of God to help us find peace in reflection and in prayer. And it's okay that sometimes we don't feel peaceful too, okay? It's okay, I mean, back to the point, we kind of had a good laugh with it, but it's okay to be angry. It's okay to feel disappointment. It's okay to feel sadness. Those are human emotions. Let's try and work through them and not let them linger. And part of that is trying to never be alone. Try to not be alone with your thoughts too much when you're feeling that way, because it has a way, it's like grief, it has a way of pulling you down. And in those moments, it's important to talk with a friend and others, and you're going to see that there are many who are feeling the same way, and we talk through it together. I guess I'd leave you with that last point as being a very important one right now. Nobody should feel alone right now, or let these circumstances make you feel alone. We are all in this together, and in that way we find peace.
Well, the green light turned red, so I think we have to start wrapping it up now. But there's one last question to finish this all off, I think. You know, it's on my mind, it's on everyone here's mind. You ran a national campaign for 107 days. I mean, we know where the question is going. Would you do it again?
As you may know, I made a decision not to run for governor of California. I wasn't ready to get back into that. So what I am doing, and this is so good to be here in Houston, what I am doing is I really am going to be spending a lot of time listening. I'm actually meeting with a group of young leaders right after I walk off stage. I really want to lift up voices. I think there's so much work we need to do right now that is about listening, and I have decided that for this moment in my life, I don't want it to be where I'm asking for somebody's vote. To have them tell me what they need. I just want to listen. And so that's how I'm spending my time right now.
Well, I think that, not to compare to the guy we have in the
trying to
White
start
House.
stuff.
No, but I think that's what people really admire about you, because there's some people who always want all the attention for themselves. They want to be at the center of everything. They want everyone to talk about me. And the fact that you're out here listening, to understand where people are at, I think that's very respectable. I think it speaks a lot about your character and the kind of leaders that we need in this country. So thank you very much. And with that, I think we have to end it now. But I do want to take a picture, because there's a lot of people. This is a lot of people, so I want to take a nice picture, take a selfie. Yeah.
Happy early birthday, Kamala! Happy early birthday, Kamala! You welcome. I love you, Kamala!